It's Monday, May 24th. I'm Scott.
I'm Rim.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight we will talk about the non-SQL, non-relational databases. Let's do this.
Oh, Adobe, why do you have to do this to me? So, Audition, I learned how to auto-tune, so watch out. And
You're going to auto-tune all of Geeknights?
I thought about it.
Didn't you have to put a song in to auto-tune?
Nah, well, there are
Doesn't
many
it
ways.
usually work where like you put the notes in and then it goes...
No, there are many ways to auto-tune, but basically, I can do them all now. What I didn't realize until recently was that the built-in functionality of Audition, I went back, and you know what? Cool Edit can do it too. I can just auto-tune. I could have auto-tuned at RIT just as good as the auto-tune now.
Just as well.
Yeah, just as goodly. But that's
well,
not
just as welly.
So I'm sad at Adobe for the fact that now I have the ability, if you couldn't tell, to auto-tune, which is not a power that should be put into hands such as mine. But I'm also sad because Audition, just before we tried to do the show tonight, so I go to record, and the input goes red line, and then Audition crashes. And I think, that's fucked up. That's awesome. Let's try this again. And it happens again. So I'm trying to troubleshoot and poking around, and Scott's getting impatient. And then I see that, somehow Audition has decided, you know what? It doesn't want to record from the nice, USB external sound card interface, or even the interface on the sound card built into the computer. No. It found the speakers and said, you know what? That is what I'm recording from. And I don't even know what kind of signal it was getting.
Uh-huh.
So, you know what? I think audio software should work 100% by now. Fuck you, Adobe.
I realized people, the complaints about Linux audio are, slightly bubbling again. It sucks since, I don't know, the year 1990, and it still sucks, right?
Yep.
Linux isn't that old. But the thing is, I was looking at some other stuff, and like audio sucks on pretty much every OS. It sucks on OS X. It sucks on Windows. This guy had a flowchart, right? And the flowchart was like, okay, if you're making a game, what audio thing do you use on Windows?
Nah.
And it was like a big flowchart. And pretty much the only one that didn't suck was this one that cost a fuck ton of money.
Well, that's it. I mean, a lot, like, if you really want to edit, Pro Tools, despite all the problems that I still say it has, is not that bad. What really bothers me is that way back in the day, like, I would try to use something like, well, I guess the precursors to Audition, before I learned Cool Edit, and I would complain about the interface, like, this interface is crap. And experts would always say things to me like, well, you're just not an expert in the field. You don't understand what a good interface is for this application.
Are you going to talk about how people psychologically like a complicated interface?
I'm going to go straight. I'm going to go in a slightly different tack because that was true about audio.
Someone figured that out, that basically... like, let's say I'm a so-and-so engineer, right? And
the best example was the stupid Bloomberg terminals I deal with at
exactly.
work.
That's what the article is talking about, is why the Bloomberg terminal is complicated and silly looking with a fancy keyboard when it doesn't need to be. It's because it makes people who know how to use it feel like they're special and feel like they're smart, and it makes them feel like they have a valuable skill when really they just learn this arbitrarily complicated interface that psychologically makes them feel good. And that's pretty much it.
But, back in the day, I complained about, I'm trying to learn how to use Cool Edit to do stuff. And I complained. I was like, this interface sucks. And the expert said, no, you just don't understand it. And then I learned audio engineering, and I realized that the interface was actually freaking awesome for what I was trying to do. It was great. The interface was exactly what I needed. And the interface in Audition is still exactly what I need. The problem is, half the time, the interface just doesn't fucking work, and things just break and crash. So they finally got the front end of audio right, as far as I can tell. It's just the back end is garbage.
Mm-hmm.
So then I have Premiere. I have the whole production premium creative suite, Adobe, everything. And I had all these complaints. Like, I tried to use Premiere, and I'm like, you know what? This sucks for video. And I went to some video experts, and they're like, well, you're just stupid and don't understand. It's just like you were with audio before. But then I talked to like people who do audio and video both for a living. And the uniform consensus among experts is that Premiere is a god-awful piece of shit, and no one worth any amount of skill or money would ever touch it.
It seems like everyone uses the really expensive Apple Final Cut thing.
Yeah, that everyone said, why don't you use Final Cut? And I was like, I'm not going to buy a Mac.
You want to pay for it? You want to, think about how much that costs. It's the cost of a Mac plus the cost of Final Cut.
Or Avid, but you're not going there.
Yeah, I don't know what that is anyway.
Yeah, regardless. And more I've been finding that as an audio engineer, audio software, it's really only back-end details and like polish behind the interface that are the problems these days.
Oh yeah, I mean, think about it. You're playing a game, right? Or you're making a game. The interface of interacting with the audio is not bad. You get a little volume meter, right? There's nothing bad about that. The problem is like the audio just won't work, or your surround sound won't actually be surround.
But here's the worst part. The audio stuff itself is great. Like all the direct, like this filter, that filter, all that stuff is great. The problem really is that Adobe doesn't bother to finish all the kind of minor details like the program doesn't crash and the program can import all forms of audio correctly.
All right. Well,
anyway, I'm feeling angry at Adobe lately because it fails me in minor, but
and because you paid a lot of money for crap.
Basically, I paid a lot of money because it's the professional stuff and it does what I need, which the non-professional stuff literally doesn't, like CMYK and Photoshop. And Photoshop is the same as Audition in my opinion. Like the interface, like it is good, it's a good application, but it still fails in these subtle integration things, like the fact that the Adobe installer is not well integrated with Windows bothers me. The fact that Adobe software does not talk to other Adobe software very well bothers me.
Well, isn't that supposed to be what the bridges thing is for?
Yeah, but the bridge has issues, and a lot of times when I import files, even if I use the Adobe like media converter, it just fucks up. And if I go to the Adobe support and open a ticket, their answer is basically, yeah, we don't actually really support that format like FLV or MPEG-4. I'm not going to get into containers and all that, but you get my drift.
Yeah. Anyway, so I got this new laptop here. It's a Lenovo X201. There was like a crazy sale.
I got to say, if I could not make do with my current laptop and I needed to buy one right now, I would have bought pretty much the same one.
See, I could have continued to make do with the one I had, the Fujitsu
you were getting near the end.
P7230. But it was getting a little breaky, right? First of all, that's a technical term, breaky, right? So, basically it had two batteries, but if I used both of them at the same time, like sometimes it would just turn off. And I could tell it was a problem with the extra battery, which was, by the way, wasn't lasting very, all that long. It was lasting like, 20 minutes. It wasn't really boosting me very much at all. So I got rid of that second battery and I put the plastic placeholder to reduce the weight. And, the big battery in the back was still all good because I had barely used it ever because I had mostly lived off the small one. And, it wasn't, turning off randomly, but it was still getting a little, the screen had a little scuffiness on it, And, it just generally, the core solo was a little slow. Like you go to YouTube and it'd be you try to play like certain Flash games, it'd be like, I can't really do this very well. And we started working on, like Project Dwarf or whatever, and it'd be like, I can't even do Project Dwarf. I'm so weak.
Well, I remember way back when you started playing Dwarf Fortress, and you were playing on that laptop, and it was so slow, and you were complaining about it. And I turned it on my laptop with the Core 2, and it blew by just a million turns a second.
Yep. So, I kept looking at the Lenovo site because I knew I wanted the tiny X series, And, I kept checking it once in a while. And I checked it, one day a couple weeks ago. And the price was like crazy low. It was like $1,400 for like the best X201. I got like 128 gig solid state drive. And it's got like an i5. They just announced like newer i5s and i7s for laptops. But it's basically it's only slightly faster than the one I've got. So big deal, right?
Actually, at work, I kept complaining my computer was slow.
And this one is so crazy fast. This computer is like, the video card and it's just some Intel poop, whatever. So I can't do for real 3D gaming like I can on my desktop. But the CPU is the fastest CPU I own because my home theater PC has an i3.
You could probably get away with playing...
My desktop has a Core 2 Duo
like
and this has an i5. Oh, yeah, I could definitely play Civ 4 or Civ 5, but I can't play like, any FPSs or anything. Not that I would with a laptop. It's got 3 USBs. It's real quiet. It's got really fast networky. It's got... awesome wireless. It's got a really nice screen. Everything about it's pretty terrific. And the thing is, right, I remembered 2 things that I forgot. Number one, 3 things I want to discuss. Number one is that...
fanatical devotion to the Pope.
Yes, number one is that ThinkPads have a little light in the top.
Oh, I totally forgot about that.
I totally forgot about those, but ThinkPads have always had those, and they still have them.
Because I used to have a ThinkPad at IBM.
Other laptops don't have them. And really, they should. The second,
I have a feeling going forward, we're going to get to the point to where backlit keyboards will be the standard as opposed to the option.
Maybe. The second thing is that the The keyboard on this has a whole lot of buttons. It's like, whoa, way more buttons than regular. I mean, look, you don't even have like F keys integrated in the numbers. They're separate F keys and everything. There's a lot of buttons on this keyboard. The thing is, like the keys are really good, but the like positioning is not so great. It's like I had the escape key is way far away from my Vimage. So I learned that control left bracket is actually escape.
Oh.
So now I'm muscle memorying, so I always use control left bracket instead of pushing escape and when using Vim. So that way I don't have to reach all the way over. And I keep hitting F1 by accident. When you hit F1 by accident, it opens up the help, which is not what you want.
I mean, looking at my Fujitsu, the boutique ultra portable, the keys are in a perfect rectangle, and the F keys are separate, but they're tiny keys in a line across the top.
These are tiny, but in the line across the top, but it's, Anyway, the other thing is that this came with Windows 7 Professional already installed. All my other Windows 7s are Home Premium, but I didn't, Premium Professional was the only choice, not that it makes a difference.
So that means you could theoretically use the XP mode if you wanted to, right?
Theoretically, I guess. Not that I would.
Yeah, you could run Cool Edit Pro.
I'll just use
audio.
I'll just use VirtualBox. Why would I? Anyway.
Because it's basically para-virtualized as opposed to fully virtualized.
It doesn't matter.
That matters. Huge performance difference.
Yeah, but it's not doing it for performance. If I'm doing virtualization, I'm doing it for, virtualization and separation.
Yeah, well, the XP compatibility mode is primarily there for businesses who have, like, some old program they need to run.
I don't have any old program I need to run. The thing I learned, right, is that number one, this doesn't have an optical drive, so it didn't come with any disks. So how do I get, like, if I want to restore it to factory settings, how do I do that? I got to plug in some sort of USB stick that's big enough, and 4 gigs apparently wasn't big enough, right? Or an external USB DVD-ROM of some kind, and you can, there's a tool that lets you create the factory restore. So I have to do that. And then there's like a factory restore partition on there also that I just left alone because it's so small I don't really care. But it is annoying that they put that on there, but I guess they have to, right? But then the thing that really got me is just how much shit was pre-installed, right? Like, there was all sorts of Lenovo tools and Intel tools they installed on top of Windows. Now, what was nice is that all these tools uninstalled very nicely. I went to add or remove programs uninstalled, and they went away, which was good, right? The thing is, why are they on there in the first place? I mean, some of them I could sort of understand. Like, there was one that, like, if you don't have the solid-state drive, it controls the motion sensors to turn off your magnetic drive if you drop your laptop. I could understand having a software tool for that and a driver for that. That makes sense, right? They also did some things that were just sort of, I guess, nice, depending on who you are. Like, they pre-installed Flash, so you don't have to go get it yourself, right? So I guess that's nice for someone who doesn't want to go installed it properly. It wasn't like they installed some hokey Flash. It was the real deal. The thing is, they installed a bunch of other useless crap, like something that manages the wireless card. It's like Windows already has that. Why did you give me this really shitty GUI that removes the wireless thing from the taskbar, puts a big ugly wireless thing, a replacement in the taskbar?
That's what amazes me.
And just makes it a worse experience overall. And they did the same thing for the battery. Like, the power icon was removed from Windows, all the Windows power stuff, and they put in their own power stuff. Luckily, it uninstalled nicely.
Even with Fujitsu.
But why did they put it there?
It's not, I don't even care so much.
Why did they even write it? Why does it even exist? I don't care so much that they put it there. Like that, maybe they're stupid, whatever reason they would have put it there. Why do they always make the icons for that stuff so fucking ugly? And big.
They look like they're out of the Windows 95 era.
They're so horrendous. Really, if I was Microsoft, what I would do, right, is I would say, look, anyone who is shipping Windows pre-installed OEM on a computer, laptop, or desktop may not modify in any way whatsoever except for these prescribed ways of modifying, right? That is it. You may not pre-install any driver, obviously you have to have the drivers installed on there, right? But you can't be installing like these separate GUIs and shit, right? Just the driver part. They need to heavily regulate the OEMs and tell them what they can and cannot do.
See, I think it's
because I think that what's happening is Windows has a bad reputation. It's always had a bad reputation, right? And I think the vast majority of its bad reputation comes from two things. Number one, stupid people filling up their computers with viruses and spyware because they're morons.
Which, not much you can do about that
Not much
yet.
you can do about that, really, And number two, OEMs putting all this shit on Windows that just makes it worse. And Microsoft really should put the foot down and say, look, you cannot put this on here. You must use the built-in Windows wireless thing. You can put the driver for the wireless card on there, obviously, But you can't go replacing the Windows wireless card controlling
now, part of
interface
it is
with
that
your own.
the
Because yours
landscape
sucks.
of the industry has changed significantly. I mean, think to back in the day when someone would go to like CompUSA and buy a computer. There were revenue streams along the way for, you know, a company to preload software that some other company paid them
AOL
to
would
do.
pay Compaq to put the AOL icon on the desktop, and AOL would get, you know, money because you signed up for AOL.
Now, there was a time
and
when
Compaq would get money from
There was a time when
AOL.
Microsoft basically, if they fought that, it would have been something that like they couldn't have fought it too much, or they would have really hurt all their resellers. I think now we're at the point Microsoft is powerful enough to tell all the OEMs, "Fuck you, get in line." And there's basically nothing they can do.
Yeah,
about
there was
it.
none of the things that were pre-installed were things that were going to make anyone money, right? It's not like they make more money if I use the Intel Lenovo wireless card, you know, access thing as opposed to the one that's built into Windows. It's not like I'm signing up for anything, right? They're not making any money on that whatsoever. Zero, nothing. There was not a single thing that was installed that was a money-making deal, like sign up for AOL or anything
Which
like
brings
that.
us back to your original point. Why do they even bother in the first place? What is the addition here? What do they do? And why are they so ugly?
I don't know. I don't know why they do it.
Even the worst part,
Instead, they're paying someone to develop that.
My Fujitsu,
Why?
right? It came with, it had the Microsoft Windows Power stuff worked just fine. It put another icon next to that did the same thing with an ugly Windows 3.1.1 interface.
Ugh.
And they had the software that turns off the hard drive and all that stuff. You know, that's the thing I wanted. And that little software thing that would
I don't
show
even
you,
need it because I have solid state, but they put it on here anyway.
but it would show you like the pitch and yaw and all this information. Then when Service Pack 1 came out, it just broke that. And every time my laptop boots, it says no driver found for that thing. And Fujitsu basically said, you know what? We're never going to make it fix. We're done. Your laptop's going to have this thing broken forever.
Yeah, well, at least, you know, what you could do, though, couldn't you just, like, if you just installed an actual clean Windows that doesn't have any of their stuff in it at all, you wouldn't get the message, though?
Well, I'd have to turn off the service. I don't want to get into the details of it,
Yeah.
but basically they broke one of the fundamental functionalities and never fixed it.
Anyway,
Let's talk about
that's just something I got to complain about. And anyone out there, you know, if you have a bad impression of Windows, or you know people have a bad impression of Windows, don't judge Windows unless you're judging the clean Microsoft pure Windows directly from the disk with no extra bullshit on it. That is the only thing that you can pass a valid judgment on. If you're judging Windows based on some spyware infested thing, or you're judging Windows...
If you're judging communism by one or two poor implementations...
I'm just... Listen. All right? It's a totally different story.
Yes, if we just did it right from the start, it would work.
I'm not saying that Windows is like the greatest ever, you know. I mean, it's not, and you know, I hate all the OSs. You know, I got something to hate about each and every one that's ever existed, except
You know, it's
maybe
funny.
BOS I never used.
It's the same thing with phones, with all the phone OSs, with all the phone
It's
hardware.
like, oh, the phones are great, and all the phones suck.
Yeah,
All the OSs are great, and all the OSs suck, except OS X only sucks.
it's interesting though. In the very least, something that sucks but doesn't have some sort of important redeeming quality fails immediately. So all we're left in the situation where everything has one killer app you can't get anywhere else, coupled with one fatal flaw that is fixed everywhere else.
Yeah, why can't someone just... It's like... If one guy has the thing fixed, why can't you also have it fixed? Then you would be...
patents. Bullshit patents.
It's not all patents.
That's a big part of
but
it,
we're going
though.
to talk about patents right now in the news.
Yes, we are. Let's get right into that because I don't want to spend the whole show griping about stuff because this is hopefully a good thing. Back in the day, Nero burning ROM was the almighty shit in the CD
this
era.
isn't even the whole... This is like a sub-story here, right? So the big story, right, is that, okay... we got the HTML5 video situation, right? A bunch of people want to use H.264, but the open source people want to use like OGG Theora, right? Thing is, OGG Theora, technologically inferior. H.264, patent encumbered. What do you do, right? Some of them are using H.264, but Firefox ain't going to do that.
The worst thing is that most times when this has happened in history, all the normal people and a lot of the techs go the third way of they'll use the patent encumbered stuff semi-illegally and basically make it the de facto standard, which then forces anyone who wants to make software to sell to deal with the bullshit.
Yep.
Which is why we had this, remember with GIF, where nothing could legally use
You don't
GIF?
even know the whole story. You're like way, way off the full information's here. So, Google, right, bought that company that made like they bought basically the other video codec company that had made the original codec that like Theora was based off of, which was like version 3 or 4 or something like that. But then now they just at their Google I/O they released like version I think 8 or 9, like the newest best version of this codec that I forget the name of. It's like on something, like on 9 or something like that. Anyway, and they released it out. They're like, here's the open source patent free awesome video codec. Let's rock with this one that's far technologically superior and is not patent encumbered. So the thing is, there's now this whole, thing. It's like, okay, if you want to actually use this right now, you've got to install this WebM thing. If you go to webmproject.org, you can learn all about it. You can install it in Firefox or whatever and all kinds of stuff. The thing is, people are still discussing. It's like, okay, you made this better codec. The thing is, if I've got like a phone and I want to play some video, like the iPhone has a hardware H.264 decoder in it. So if you're playing an H.264 on an iPhone, it's going to be way better, and it's going to use a lot less battery compared to even if you use this, better codec that's not patent encumbered, there's no hardware decoder for it, and there's that whole situation, right? So on top of that, right, there's the MPEG-LA.
Well, basically all that is a consortium of companies who all have... Basically, they've contributed one or more patents to a pool, and then collectively they all share this pool of patents with a sort of not mutually assured destruction, but mutual, we will not sue each other over patent infringement by agreeing to license these things all to each other. And basically,
but it's not just that. It's on top of that, what they do is they charge people like $1 zillion for the license, right? So if you're making a web browser and you want H.264 in there, you have to pay to be in the MPEG-LA, right? So basically they have this, it's like a huge racket basically to where people pay, they're in, then they have this huge interest in maintaining, the MPEG-LA situation.
Yep.
It's like once you're in, and they're basically, you can't use anything else because everyone who's in is gonna use the thing that they paid for or have patents on.
Now here's where it gets really bad. The way the laws are, it really comes down to the fact that software patents are, even what little of them we have, and algorithmic patents, are way too powerful and long-lived because they have so many patents in the pool that if anyone competed with them, even if you in a clean environment built a brand new video codec, the odds are you have at least on the surface level infringed upon one or more of their long-standing patents because a lot of the patents are generic bullshit. Mm-hmm. So they basically have a complete monopoly and the power to destroy anyone.
It's not a real, it's like a weird legal monopoly, but it's not actually a monopoly. It's not it's not like H.264. I mean, it's a very popular video codec, but plenty of other video codecs are being used, like DivX and all kinds of other MPEG-4 codecs.
Of course, remember, a lot of the MPEG-LA owns a lot of codecs.
They do. But, they don't have every single codec. There are many codecs being used that are not there. So they don't have like a physical monopoly, but they've got this legal monopoly, at least in the U.S., to where you pretty much, if you're doing video, if you're not doing one of their stuff, then they can sue you.
Now, they have also claimed that Theora and a lot of other codecs that they don't have any interest in actually infringe upon all their patents. Mm-hmm. And this is where Nero Burning ROM has stepped in. I don't think they're actually called Nero Burning ROM. No, they're called
Nero AG.
Yeah, I just know them from their first greatest product.
Yeah, Nero is, they're a pretty cool company. I mean, they don't make, too much open source stuff, but they made Nero Burning ROM, which is pretty much the only way to burn disks back in the day. And the only reason we stopped using it is because all the operating systems the only time I ever used it was to burn an ISO, pretty much.
Or to burn like an overburn, which I don't need to do anymore.
Don't need to do that anymore, right?
Back in the day, I needed to.
Yeah. So their product, these Nero Burning ROM is no longer useful. But I do remember, right, they pretty much had all this great stuff. Like if I played an MP3 in Nero, like it just sounded way better because they had way better MP3 decoders than
I forget what
else.
The codec was that they used, but it was some special one because I remember pulling it out and using it in something else.
It was like I could do a double blind test on it like every single time because there was just something they did that just...
Wow, I think I'm old. I actually forgot the names of all... Remember back there's the Fraunhofer like reference, and then there are all these kind of other ones.
Yep.
Because Lame used one and something else. It's all gone. I'm old. It's
the point
disappeared
is
from my brain.
And then they made like Nero Burning ROM for Linux in the days when burning a disk on Linux was really painful. And I don't know what they're doing now. I don't use any of their
here's what they're doing
anymore.
now. They have filed a straight-up, full-on antitrust complaint against the MPEG-LA.
Yeah, take that, bitches.
And they're basically
Nero
saying
coming out of the booth.
exactly what Scott said, that the MPEG-LA has this kind of weird loophole legal monopoly that is preventing anyone else from competing in the market whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And this is probably, it might seem like a little thing, like, all right, some people are fighting over these video codecs. If this goes our way, few things do in the courts, guys. But if this goes our way, this is one of those game changers. This would be like DMCA getting repealed.
Yeah, like internet videos would be like, oh snap, videos in the house. All those situations, like, you know how you have to jump through a bunch of hoops to get all your video codecs in line? Right? Like
That's because of this bullshit.
Yeah, if Nero, like, wins this, then basically, like, every video player will play every kind of video. That's the best possible situation. I'm not saying that's going to happen, here's what best possible case, there might be a court ruling that's like, every Linux can just come with every video codec installed. Every video player will play every video file, every audio file just totally awesomely. You won't have to install any weird stuff, no hoop jumping, no nothing. You'll be able to have streaming video of any kind going to any device. It'll be freaking crazy awesome.
Well, I'll say this.
This is one barrier to reaching that golden paradise.
I have 3 kind of levels of optimism in terms of my prediction for what will happen. I guess starting at the top.
Most likely Nero loses because they don't have as much money as everyone else combined.
Well, that aside, because the
MPEG-LA is everyone else combined, right? It's Microsoft
basically,
and
yeah.
Apple and
like Daewoo and everyone.
It's everybody.
But like one thing that could happen, and this is kind of the most like likely optimistic outcome I have, is that the courts would install or enforce some sort of statutory royalty to where the MPEG-LA could continue to force people to license, but it would have a statutory royalty that they would have no control over. That would be much lower. Which I could live with that. That's kind of the status quo, don't rock the boat too much.
The thing is, even the $1 royalty is too much. Isn't going to fix anything.
Here's a less likely, more optimistic outcome. Statutory royalties based on the sale price of whatever it is you're selling.
That'd be good, because if it's not zero, right, then Firefox and whatever, even if it is zero, if it's not open source, Firefox and Linux's distributions might not include it. So,
yeah, but at the same time, the non-GNU Neckbeard distros would, if it was completely free and guaranteed and protected by law.
Yeah.
But, statutory royalty based on cost would be something I could... But what we really need, but I basically have zero optimism for this whatsoever, is that I think the biggest hindrance to incremental improvement in all technology today is the fact that patents are too powerful. And basically, software evolves so quickly that, all right, someone makes a slightly better codec. If they can't step on the shoulders of the previous codecs, take the MPEG-LA owned stuff and incrementally improve it, everyone who has a good idea has to either pay out the nose, join the racket, or start from scratch.
Right. Well, think about it this way. Here's a good analogy, right? So I'm making a car. Oh, no, let's say I'm making tires, right? I'm Michelin.
Oh, but I got the patent on round.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because, the thing is, the wheel is such an old invention, the patent is expired, right? so if I make...
You realize if Thog were still alive and he had sold those rights to Disney, we'd be fucked.
Right, so
we'd have square tires on our Linux mobile.
The patent on the wheel has expired. So if I make like all sorts of different wheels, right, that improve upon, the default wheel or tire in various ways, the patent on the tire even... Ow, why did you do what you hit me in the nose for?
I'm banged down. I'm sorry.
Don't do that. Anyway, so...
we had an accident in the studio
right,
here.
even the patent on the tire even the tire, much newer than the wheel, right, is so old that it's expired. So I can make all sorts of tires and improve upon the invention of tire in many ways without having to worry about patent infringement, because it's wide open. Now, imagine if the tire straight up was invented like 5 years ago, and I'm sitting here making improvements on the tire, right? Because a tire was just invented, that hasn't expired yet, so pretty much only one person in the world can make tires, or if I want to make tires, I have to pay them a boatload of money. When patents were made in a time where the rate of invention was relatively slow to what it is now, to where all the fundamental inventions were very old. And the problem is computer science is so new, relatively speaking, programming is so new, software is so new, that patents on these fundamental things, like the tire of programming, are still in effect.
The Amazon one-click.
Yeah, right? So there are these fundamental things to software that are pretty much in all software that are still patented, and is bullshit. And the thing is, I think if you're going to even argue that patents should even exist for software or for anything or for whatever, the thing is, if nothing else, the time of a patent needs to be relative to the rate of invention, right? If we are making improvements upon things on a daily basis, right, then a patent really should just be a few hours, right?
Yeah.
You know, if it takes a week to bring something to market and then something's obsolete a month after that, then a patent should be a month and a week. You know, and the thing is, patents are still 17 years, I think.
They're so long that basically, if I get a patent on some fundamental, like say there's a new video codec and I have the patent on it,
that video codec will be useful for maybe 2 or 3 years,
and then after that, for the next 15 years or so,
you're just obstructing the entire world into having shitty video for 14 years.
No one but me can take the thing I invented and perform what I think is obvious incremental improvement.
Yeah.
So, I think this is one of the most far-reaching issues in technology today is that patent
something else we could do is you
encumbrance-
can make an exception to where it's like, if you improve upon something that's patented, then, you know, like if you just you reuse something that's patented, right? Like, okay, you made MPEG, right? And I took MPEG and I just included it straight up in my shit. No. But maybe if I take your MPEG and I make it better, then your patent doesn't mean shit because I made your shit better.
I've thought about the same idea. Imagine if you applied it to just straight up copyright, not just patents, with the idea that, for example, duplicating someone's work in its entirety or with no substantial change and then just reselling it or whatever, or still illegal for some short period of time. But remixing, mashing up, parody, and all that stuff.
The only problem with this is you get the mega tie, mega two, mega T, mega two
Yep.
situation where everybody will just infringe everyone else's patents and copyrights, but crook them slightly so.
But at the same time, if they can be crooked slightly so, then there's probably the patent is a little too fundamental.
I don't know.
It's hard to say. I really don't know the solution. All I know is that I wish Nero the best of luck because I can't not overstate how impactful this would be on the world if they won. Or even if there was a compromise that was 90% against them.
Yep. But anyway, the fight over the future of video on computers is like full on. And it's right now it's Nero versus the world.
I feel ready to take on the world.
Oh, shit.
Oh, and Google TV, but there's not enough info to really say much about it yet. So
the one thing that is interesting about Google TV is that, you know, if it's built into your TV, then you don't have the one extra box problem, right? And
Yep.
what Google TV seems to be able to do is you could hook in your cable and your DVR and your Boxy and whatever other video, your Netflix and whatever other video sources you've got, right? And then you can just, instead of ever changing channels or specifically picking videos to play or anything like that, all you would do is turn on your TV and search for what you want to watch. So if you want to watch Hokuto no Ken, you would turn on your TV and you type in Hokuto no Ken. And if it found any Hokuto no Ken on your DVR, on Crunchyroll, on YouTube, on anywhere, it would bring it up and you'd pick one and it would play. And so that basically it changes your TV by aggregating all your video sources and then allowing you to search it sort of like Google Desktop does. And that's Google TV.
Now, independently, Logitech...
Boxy sort of does this, and I think Google TV would actually be a good like front end on the Boxy. Like if you just opened up Boxy and you just searched and then played.
Yep, well, it's hard to say what's going to happen with Boxy and everything. I think who's really interested in this is, remember when Hulu blocked Boxy because they don't want people to actually use the internet to watch TV? Mm-hmm. I think what Google TV is going to do. Now, we don't have enough details to know exactly like what video formats does it really support, what does it really do. Logitech's making a box that'll basically let anyone use it if they don't have one of these Google TVs.
Yeah.
But this could be the device that basically is the death knell of cable TV for most techie people and young people.
Well, I hope, right? The thing is, it seems like a lot of people are probably going to still have cable and DVRs. They're just never going to watch channels. They're just going to search. So if it's time to watch Super Bowl, right, you go to your TV, you type Super Bowl, and you push enter, and then it just turns on to whatever channel it is on that year, and there you go. And people aren't going to flick through the channels anymore, right? And
but also a lot of people, more people in our generation, I think studies show more and more dropping cable entirely because idle entertainment is trivially found on the internet forever.
Yeah, but hopefully, right, what this will do is more people will, the problem is that right now you can plug your computer into your TV for awesome, but not enough people do it.
And it's not super easy. It's not drop in place for grandma to do it.
Well, some of it is, depending on what box you get. Like if you do a Roku, it is. But if you do like a computer like I have, it's not. Right?
But it's not all, like the Roku is great for Netflix and all that
An
stuff.
Apple TV is, but it's useless.
Yeah, I think multiple articles basically said that Google TV
the Boxy box would be,
embarrasses
but
Apple
the Boxy
TV.
box is not out yet.
Yep, but we'll see. Google, they have a reputation for coming out with cool things like this and making it 80% there and then just not finishing it.
That's pretty much everything Google.
Yep, but lately they've been getting to like 85% with things like Google Apps. So we'll see.
They're getting a little better.
It's like 82% maybe. We'll see. There's not enough information to say for sure, but Google TV, for if it does what we think it may do, will be a game changer. Between that and Boxy, that's going to scare a lot of the old media.
I hope they give Google TV out for like free as software so I can just install it on a computer, right? The way I install Boxy.
I could foresee them doing that.
Or they make up, like, maybe I can, if they have an API for it, I can make a Boxy app for Google TV. Because the Boxy guys said that, like, Google TV, they see it as complementary, which I totally agree with.
Well, Logitech and Sony, I believe, are smart. Sony will sell their new OLED TV with Google TV built into it, and the people who will buy that TV are not the people who would go buy some separate box.
Yep.
So that market, they'll basically make money anyway.
The thing is, they've got to set it up so where you turn on the TV and the Google thing like comes out at you, right? Because like, look at your TV. Your TV has some internet Yahoo widget thing, right?
Yep.
But that doesn't just come out at you when you turn the TV on. You have to actually do a bunch of stuff to make it appear if you even know it's there.
Yep. It's also slow as shit.
Yeah, so the Google, right, what they've got to do is they've got to make it so that if you have a TV with Google TV, it has to be a Google TV. Like, you turn the TV on, and there's the fucking search box. Boom, right up top. You know? Like, as soon as you turn it on, it's good, right? And the thing is, I think they'll actually get a lot of... They're not competing with anyone, really. Because what it does is it doesn't actually have any video sources of its own other than the internet, right? So what it does, it brings in all these video sources the way that Boxy does, you know,
which is
and
the greatest fear of the current content generation regime, because basically there's so much free content out there. If it's all aggregated and easy to get, that really hurts their bottom line, I think, in a huge way.
I think it's just another example of the middlemen being eliminated, right? Because you've got TV networks like some TV station, some cable network. They buy productions from some, you know, production company that's making TV shows. Then they put it on TV with some ads, and people buy ads even if no one's watching, right? Whereas now, if you remove the middleman of the network, it's just people watching videos direct, right? Then it's pretty much all these production companies who make shitty shows but manage to survive by selling them to networks, they're going to die. The networks are going to die, and pretty much the only people left are going to be the consumers, the tech companies who are providing the technological services because the production companies can't do it themselves, and the production companies who actually make shows that people actually watch, and that's gonna be it. Everyone else is gonna be dead.
Yep. But it's
the same in every entertainment
the reason I think
industry.
that they're gonna let the software be free is that Logitech, you know, the people who would sell the boxes, I don't think the people who would use it on their own computer and then install it are competing with the same demographic as the people who will just buy the Logitech box and put it down. Logitech box is for mom or for me because I don't really feel like building an HTPC maybe. But I already have a bunch of PCs, so maybe I'll just throw it on my Mac or something. I don't know.
Something else that's interesting, I was reading about, you know how it's pretty annoying that like all the Android phones are sort of like different versions and you can't upgrade them and all this kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
Basically, I read, and the reason for this isn't because, you know, you'd think, oh, it's because Google's lazy or whatever, right? But really, no. What it is that Google just keeps improving Android constantly. They keep upgrading and upgrading and upgrading and upgrading and upgrading all the time, constantly. Think about how many new versions have come out in such a short time versus how long it took, like, a new version of Windows Mobile to come out, right? And the thing is, it's not like Windows Mobile. If I'm a phone carrier, if I'm a phone maker, I license Windows Mobile to put it on my phones, right? I'm paying Microsoft for this. So, you know, it's up to Microsoft to like make sure the shit works and everything so I can upgrade and whatnot because I'm paying them. With Android, it's just you just get it for free. It's open source. It's just out there. If I start a phone company and I just start making phones from like, you know, I'm basically soldering together old Nokias to make
not soldering.
Soldering old Nokia. So if I just start making phones in my garage, I can just put Android on them without giving Google a second look, right? But then it's up to me to make my phones have all the newer Androids on it. And the thing is, the shitty phone makers and shitty phone carriers can't keep up, right? So some of them are better than others. Like HTC is better at keeping up, than
HTC, I like them.
Yeah, but like Samsung, they can't keep the fuck up. They just suck ass. They can't, Google keeps updating the phone and Samsung keeps updating Android. And Samsung, we can't keep up with all these Android updates because we suck so bad. That's the reason. Don't blame Google for this. Google's actually just upgrading as fast as possible. It's the phone makers and the phone carriers who can't keep up. And I see the same thing in like the HTPC area,
Wow, that went on for a while. So I guess things of the day. About half the people I run into knew this. The other half didn't. So you guys probably have a 50-50 shot. I did not know. Mark Twain said that 100 years after his death, his autobiography, which was in escrow, should be published. And it's now been 100 years.
The thing is, right, okay, they put it in escrow, but they didn't have to obey him for 100 years.
Well, the thing
they
is,
could have chose to not obey him.
They could. Now, here's the thing. Had the person who had it just released it against Mark Twain's wishes, I would not have faulted him because I will never fault someone morally for revealing truth. But at the same time, if he chose not to reveal it, I will not fault him because he did honor the wishes.
Oh yeah, I'm saying they had to do it. I'm saying they didn't have to not.
I'm saying it's interesting that I wouldn't fault someone either way. Nor would I fault the third party who broke in, stole it, and revealed it.
Well, it was stealing property that doesn't belong to you.
But at the same time, revealing truth through investigative reporting.
Investigative reporting doesn't include breaking and entering and stealing.
What if it wasn't breaking and entering? It was digital breaking and not even breaking, just digital copying.
Did they physically enter property that was not theirs?
Let's say no, but they did trespass to Chattel's by breaking into like an email server, but they didn't cause any harm. They just copied it.
See, what they would have to do to make it totally kosher, right, is to use X-ray vision to see into the vault, read it, and then type it into a computer while sitting out in the public street. That would have been
No,
okay.
because there's legal precedent that if it's like, for example, I can take a picture of your house and you happen to be naked in the window, fuck you. I can do whatever I want with that picture. If I take a picture of your house through the window into your bedroom with a telephoto lens, not cool because you had a reasonable expectation of privacy. So the inside of the safe has a reasonable...
Do you have a reasonable expectation of privacy if everyone in the
has
whole
X-ray
world
vision?
has
No.
X-ray vision?
But not everyone does yet.
No, anyway, my thing today is real quick. Do you remember this Flash game called the Codex of Alchemical Engineering?
Oh yeah, it was basically teach kids the cool, fun parts of coding, version 1.
Yeah, there's another game out. It's called Manufactoria. It's a lot less subtle than the Codex of Alchemical Engineering.
That's for sure.
It's pretty much like, hey kids, Turing machines, check it out. But it's a good game, and it's good Turing machines, and you'll learn something. So play this game.
So, I don't know how long we'll talk about this. Scott has a lot more direct experience with it than I do, though. I've played with CouchDB quite a bit. Basically, we want to talk about, when people think databases, at least tech people, they think things like Postgres or MS SQL or Oracle or DB2. They think of relational databases, which for most people, if you think database, you think relational database. That is what a database is in most people's minds.
Yep. But nowadays, it's been really trendy lately to go with the non-SQL databases. Some of them are key value stores. Some of them are documented-oriented databases. So, they go by many different names, but NoSQL is like the trendy term.
Yeah, I mean,
even though it's sort of
it's
an accurate term, though, because I've seen some of these that actually can work with SQL, even though they're not relational.
Yep.
You just can't do a join.
I mean, you can go all the way down to like an LDAP that's literally just a flat CSV, and then you
Exactly.
lookups.
All right, so this is the first thing, right? These are way trendy lately. All right, all these NoSQL databases. But the thing is, the original databases weren't relational. They were flat databases. It's basically a blast from the past, right? It's like we finally got to the point where we could make relational databases, and we were like, yes, awesome.
Kind of like object-oriented programming. It was a whole new paradigm.
But now people are like, oh yeah, these relational databases, it's so hard to replicate with them. Even though it's not that hard, but it's harder than it could be, right? And I don't actually need this relational bits, or my website is hard to scale. The database is totally getting crushed. What do I do? So they go back and they've made basically these modern non-relational databases. They're like the databases of old, but they're new. And the replication is easy. The load balancing is easy. The partitioning is easy in many cases. And the other thing is that many of them are schemaless, which is very, very useful for many, many applications of the modern day, is not having a schema at all. All right? So the first thing that bothers me, right, is some of the people who are like zealoty about these NoSQL databases, right?
That's just silly.
Yeah. For example, right, some people will be like, okay, MySQL, yeah, MySQL sucks. Why? Well, because if you use MySQL in the default mode with the default engine of MyISAM, then you don't get any of the foreign key constraints, and it's not ACID compliant, and it might screw up and all this stuff.
Let's translate that. If you take a product off the shelf, make no customizations, and don't read the documentation and don't configure it, it doesn't perform exactly what you might have wanted it to do?
No, it's not even that. It will perform exactly what you want it to do, but it won't be super hardcore for database people. They won't like it.
Well, those people shouldn't be using MySQL
well,
anyway.
No, but if you use MySQL in InnoDB mode, right, then it will do all those things just as, it's ACID compliant and totally awesome. But it'll be slow. But it won't be slow. It'll just be slower than the non-ACID compliant mode, right? And it'll basically be as fast as Postgres is. And right? But the thing is, so these hardcore people are like, oh, you got to use Postgres. Postgres is for real, right? And the thing is, I used to be like, yeah, okay, Postgres is for real and MySQL isn't for real. You know what? I have yet to find someone who can actually explain to me why Postgres is for real and MySQL is not. If you use MySQL, if you really need your data to be for real, then you can use the MySQL in the slow mode. It'll be easier to use because Postgres is wicked user unfriendly.
That's for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
It'll be easier to replicate because MySQL slaving is way better than Postgres. Even though the newest version of Postgres that might be coming soon apparently makes the slaving situation easier.
I'm running the beta on my Windows box. I've been playing with it.
Oh, nice. So
yeah, you can even do, like, as an example, just to give a specific concrete. In MySQL, it is actually very easy to set up master two-way replication. You can have two database
You don't really
servers.
want to do that.
Well, there are situations where you might want to. However, you got to know what the fuck you're doing, or you're just going to make a mess.
But master-slave is way easy. And most of the time, even if you don't need to scale or anything, you want to do master-slave to have a warm backup, right? That's what most... Right? In Postgres, even that is difficult to do, right? Just because Postgres is difficult. So I want to hear from the Postgres zealots out there, right? Why, if I'm not a bank, right, and I don't care about like data integrity hardcore, like wicked hardcore, I need everything to be perfect, right? Why would I use Postgres? It's just like a blog. Who cares? I'll use MySQL with MyISAM. Sure, it's not ACID compliant. Who gives a shit? It works and it's crazy fast.
Well, here's my reasons for using it. I basically am a bank, and I do need that.
No, I'm saying that you are a bank, but I'm talking about for like people are saying like even for websites, like, oh, you got to use Postgres. It's like, what the fuck? It's a fucking website.
The only other
why
argument,
would I use something that's harder to use, difficult to replicate, and whatever? There's some under the hood differences. Tell me what they are and why they matter to someone who is not a bank.
One thing I have found is that there are performance advantages to Postgres depending on what kind of reading and writing you're doing.
It might be that Postgres, being all compliant and super perfect, right, on the database low level is faster than the MySQL in the perfect mode.
But you know what? If you're at the point where performance matters that much, you should be doing your own benchmarking.
Yeah. So anyway, the second thing, these same people, right, will come to you and say, yeah, we couldn't scale any of those relational databases, so we used the NoSQL database. So it's like, oh, wait a minute. The NoSQL data, it's like they couldn't use MySQL in the MyISAM mode because it wasn't compliant and awesome, right?
Yep.
So they used either MySQL, InnoDB, or Postgres, but they couldn't use those because they were too slow. But they could use like MongoDB or CouchDB or Cassandra or any of these NoSQL databases. They're like, now we can scale and replicate, and it's awesome. I'm like, dude, that NoSQL database that you're using is no more compliant. In fact, it's much less compliant than the MySQL in the fast crappy mode. Why didn't you just go back to using MySQL in the fast crappy mode?
I think
right?
my belief is that a lot of the people who are for this are not actually super good coders. And basically, I've noticed, like in IT at least, a lot of people shy away from learning about databases on the low level. Like a lot of IT people and CS people don't know much about like really using databases. So real relational databases probably scare them, and they find it a lot easier to develop for and optimize for things that aren't actually databases.
Yeah. Here's the thing: is these NoSQL databases, though, what I found through extensive research, including I went to the Mongo NYC like conference last Friday, and I learned all about Mongo and about this stuff in general, right? Is there are two use cases for it. One use case is if you actually need to scale big, right? For example, I heard a talk from the guy who does the tech for Sluggy Freelance, right? The webcomic. And he basically just does it because he's friends with the guy, the webcomic artist. And, he's not getting paid for it or anything. He's just doing it because, he's a pal. And basically, their servers couldn't handle it. And their goal is to save money, right? Because basically, tech is just a cost for them, right? And the Sluggy guy's living off of it. So they just want to be able to get the website to handle all the traffic, and it gets a lot of traffic comparatively to other webcomics, right? But they need to, like, as few servers as possible, as with as little hardware resources as possible to keep the price down. They want to use free stuff, right? And in that case, right, using, the NoSQL database definitely helps them out. It lets them, scale way bigger, right, with replication, with very easy replication, easy partitioning, easy load balancing, right, easy backups and all this stuff for way cheaper than even using MySQL in the fast mode. So that is totally a good reason to use it. Second good reason to use Bitly also. There was a guy from Bitly talking about how they use it for like one function of Bitly, not the whole thing, just one function of it. They apparently the actual Bitly part, this the URL shortener is still MySQL, I think he said. But there's like one part of Bitly that uses Mongo, and they've got it like, split between two machines that both have like slave backup things. It's like they need it to be all reliable like that and also fast, and it totally works for that. Another reason to use it is you have lots of writing going on, right? Because the fast mode in MySQL is really good for reading, but if you're writing a lot to the database, it basically locks the table while it's writing. So if a whole bunch of people are trying to read it while you're writing to it, it goes, ah. And you could use a slave and make everyone read from the slave, but then there's some problems occasionally where you'll write to the slave and then write to the master, read from the slave before the write is propagated, then it's wrong. And if you care about that, then but that can happen in the NoSQL databases also. But
it won't happen with Postgres, but then you need to know what you're doing to get at the replication.
You get a lot of writing going on, right? For example, let's say you want to put you're tracking your like Google Analytics, right? So every time someone hits your page, you're writing to the database, right? That would be a good reason to use a NoSQL, right?
One other case I've found, at least for me, is rapid prototyping of things. I'll use CouchDB just as a quick backend to stuff stuff in, and then I replace it with a proper database like interface once I'm done.
Yep.
With like just getting my, like the basically the logical side of my code before I get to the actual like recoding it properly side.
Yep. Now, another reason to use a NoSQL database is because they don't have a schema, right? So if you're using MySQL, even in the fast mode, you have to choose what columns are in your table. And if you want to change something about your application that requires a database change, like I have to add a new field, then you've got to go to the database and add a new field. And it's this huge pain in the ass. If you want to remove a field, God help you, right? Most of these NoSQL guys are schemaless. You can just add and remove fields willy-nilly. Two separate, rows in quotes, right, are in the same exact, table in quotes also, because, sometimes it's like two different documents in the same collection or whatever, whatever they want to call it, right? Could have completely different fields. One could have like a name and a date field, and the other one could have like a time and a video field. And they'll be right next to each other and it won't give a shit at all. And this is really useful. Like, let's say you're making something like IMDb, right? So you put all these movies in. And, most movies have like a year and a director, right? But, oh my God, this movie has like a subdirector and no other movie had that. If you're using a NoSQL database, you can just be like, boom, subdirector field on this one and not on any of the others. Just do it, right? Yep. But if you're using a MySQL database or a relational database, you have to go and explicitly add the field just because one fluke movie came along. And that's a pain. The Sluggy guy actually talked about how for their e-commerce part, PayPal keeps changing like what fields they send you. So basically, he just stores every field PayPal sends them in the non-relational database, no matter what they send. And it doesn't matter if PayPal changes what fields it's sending. They just keep all of them. And they only pay attention to the ones that they care about, and it's all good. And, it totally just works out because whatever PayPal sends them, they can just store every single thing that PayPal sent them. They don't have to keep changing their database to match PayPal's changing API. It's just always good. And that's another good reason for them.
I would argue, too, now that I think about it, I think another thing that drives a lot of, I guess, less apt coders to this, I found that a lot of serious tech people I know don't actually know SQL.
I know, that's the thing. It's like,
it.
I'm really, really good at SQL. At least I think so. So
I mean, I'm no guru. Like,
I've
seen some queries that make me quake.
A lot of times, people try to use these ORMs, which is where you can interact with the database by objects without having to write any SQL. And the thing is, they always frustrate me because sure, they might be easy to code, and I use them. That's basically my job, right? But it always frustrates me that they write such shitty SQL or they force me to create such shitty SQL when I know that I could write basically, some page will do like 20 queries. I know I could write one query to do the whole page. I know I could do it. But I just, there's an ORM sitting there. And of course, you can always write raw SQL, but it's like, it's just more work.
Yep. I mean, whenever I write stuff, interfaces or things internally, like I got to grab stuff from a database and then send it via SOAP to some other thing. I'll usually I'll spend most of my time writing the query to get exactly what I want out of the database in the most efficient way possible. And then that will be my point of interface. So my actual code is very simple. Mm-hmm. I'm not doing like a million transformations and like secondary lookups to figure out what, this field say is defined in some other table. So I'm not like doing multiple lookups or anything. Just one awesome joined query that's the most efficient thing possible. Yep. That gives me exactly what I need. But a lot of coders, I just don't think can do that.
Nope, I don't think they can.
And I think part of it is that I don't think most IT and CS education emphasizes, I think data access and data storage and SQL are actually very important subjects that are overlooked by a lot of programs.
Yeah, I took one database class and it was kind of weak.
RIT forced us.
I didn't actually learn databases in that class. I learned them later on my own.
See, RIT forced all IT majors, at least, to take one pretty hardcore intro to database class. Like, it got, like, in the beginning, it was like, this is a database. And by the end, it was, write complex outer joins from multiple heterogeneous databases. Yep.
So this is another thing, right? So a lot of web applications out there aren't actually relational in nature, right? So think about, say, WordPress, right? You make a post, and a post has a whole bunch of stuff in it. It's got comments, it's got body text, it maybe has some videos, right? But it's not related to anything, really. There's no reason you have to make that relational, right? You could totally make that non-relational, where each post is its own row, and every single piece of data about that post is in that row. And
like, think of CouchDB. You've got, your identifier for, if you're using that as an example, identifier for my blog post, X. And then say I have a video associated with it. All right, that's just in the database now.
Yep.
Video and then the file, or video and then the link.
You can just, right? So if you don't have a relational application, using one of these, you do lose some things in terms of data integrity and data safety and making sure your data is like always correct, but you make up for it because it's so scalable, right? If you need to scale. If you don't need to scale, I say don't bother, right? But it is also more flexible because the fact that you can just change the schema at any time. You're not restricted.
That's what I say. It's especially good for rapid prototyping. Like, say, I was writing, I gave up on this. I'm going to use something else instead. Say I needed to make an application that's going to track like panels for a convention. So, all right, so I define my database schema and figure out like all the data I need to track and make the database, and then start writing the code. Every time I decide, like, all right, this logical flow is bad, I have to change it. I either have to change all my database schema,
alter table, blah,
or I have to work my code around the schema I already wrote, as opposed to just solving the problem. So, like, CouchDB is perfect to just have a backend that's functional while I'm figuring out the logic. Because, a good coder, you might get 90% through a project and then realize you made a fundamental flaw in your flow, and you're better off kind of going all the way back and writing again than you are writing around this problem with all this existing infrastructure.
Yep. The thing is, there's some applications out there that are inherently relational, right? Maybe you've got something where, I don't know.
Address books are a good example. Keeping track of people, keeping track of inventory.
Yeah,
these are things where you have a list of assets, and every asset has a series of defined relationships to like who owns it and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's like, okay, who owned it? This person. What else does this person own? When you want to start asking crossways questions, right?
Yep.
Like, okay, what are the tags in this blog post? That's a straight up question. You can just look at the blog post object and see what tags are on there, right? But a sideways question is show me all the blog posts with the tags of foo.
Suddenly you're in a lot of trouble with these non-relational databases.
Right now, you could do that very easily with a query or a join in SQL, but using the non-relational database, you have to do it yourself. You have to write your own join. What a pain in the ass is that? And it's not really that fast. I mean, sure, you're still getting the scaling and the load balancing and all those good things. And maybe if you don't have to do it too often, or you do it in controlled cases with indexes and stuff like that, you'll be all right, But if you have to do that a lot, like that's what your application is constantly doing, that sort of thing. Like, show me all the movies directed by Fu. Okay, now for that movie directed by Fu, show me everyone who is in it. Okay, now, right? You keep going crossways and ups, and, through the data in multiple different directions, joining and selecting across in all sorts of different ways.
Or never mind data mining. Like, if you want to be able to use this data for some sort of complex analysis later on, you really want relational databases.
Yeah, if it's relational data. So these people, like some of them were even suggesting, right, to use the NoSQL database when the data is highly relational. And, maybe I can understand these people, they keep making websites that are, so big, they need to scale so big that they, it's easier for them to just write a join themselves than it is to try to get MySQL or Postgres to scale in some way, which is somewhat understandable. But really, that's not the right way. You could just, put the memcache out in front and, get it going properly. Think about, even the Bitly people, right? They talked about how they were using the MongoDB for this one, like, history feature, but they're using MySQL for the straight up, URL shortener, which is far more trafficked. And they've obviously made it scale and it works. Bitly ain't slow, So you can scale without using these things. Scaling alone is not a reason to pick NoSQL, non-relational over relational.
So here's the trouble, I guess, for a lot of our non-technical listeners or the not super technical. It seems like the only way to know if you need a relational database or not, or if you need scaling or any of this stuff, is to already be an IT or CS expert.
Yeah, but the thing is, even a lot of experts, so like they've totally drunk. There were so many people there who drank the Kool-Aid on this. Like a lot of the people.
I can say that no one in the enterprise world has.
Granted, it was the Mongo NYC. It was about this one product, right? And it was the company that, supports it was there. There was obviously, you pay us to learn about our thing and we try to sell it to you situation. And the thing is, a lot of the talks were straight up educational. A lot of them were like really high quality. People, giving you the pros and cons of different setups, suggesting some best practices and all this stuff. But there were like a couple people who were just totally Kool-Aid. And I was just like, dude, not cool. Like, whatever. But yeah, if you're out there and you want to, learn some databasing or whatever, it's worth playing around with these things because, you can just sort of start them up and start poking at them and learn about some databasing. Yeah,
it's actually pretty straightforward. In fact, if you really want, I would recommend, if you're in like a corporate environment, you have access to it, the IDE, the MS SQL like server management tool, if you have an MS SQL database installed somewhere at work, is actually super awesome for, if you have you import a database for writing queries and seeing how they work, and it kind of guides you in writing the SQL. That's actually, I've seen a lot of people learn how to do SQL with that. So if you're in college, you can probably get a hold of that and just, use the query analyzer, write some queries, find like some test database and just mess with it.
The other thing is that, like if you connect to Postgres or MySQL in the terminal, I mean, MySQL is a lot easier to use in the shell than Postgres is.
Postgres is really easy. You just type, Postgres basically.
No,
you type PSQL.
The shell itself is kind of shitty. It's got all these / commands, whereas in
whereas
in MySQL, you just be like, show databases, use this database.
See, I guess
tables.
I'm used to that. No, never mind fucking Oracle. I got to look at.
Yeah, I don't even know what the Oracle is like.
I've learned it again.
Okay, but right, if you use a lot of these NoSQL guys, their shells are even easier to use. Like Mongo, for example, right, the one that I went to the conference about. Their shell is basically a JavaScript. You can just, any JavaScript you can type in there, right? And it's just, the whole thing is JavaScript. So it's like, the Python shell. It's like totally fun and awesome. You can do all sorts of crazy stuff in it. And it's great for learning how their stuff works if you just open up their shell and go nuts.
Of course, SQL too. A lot of people are afraid of SQL, but it really is very close to natural language until you get to more advanced queries. I mean, anyone can understand the statement, select all from, foo table where bar equals 1.
Yeah. Select name from, shows.people where name, where age equals 30. Well, that's going to give me all the names of all the 30-year-old people in the shows table.
Yep.
Shows database. Whatever.
I mean, it remains intelligible as a natural language further along than you'd expect. Of course, once you have like 10 case statements thrown in, you're not going to really read so well.
I never use case statements.
I use case a lot when I won't get into the details. We've gone on too long enough.
Yep.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music, Kat Lee for web design, and Brando K for the logos.
Be sure to visit our website at frontrowcrew.com for show notes, discussion, news, and more.
Remember, Geeknights is not one, but 4 different shows. Sci-Tech Mondays, Gaming Tuesdays, Anime Comic Wednesdays, and Indiscriminate Thursdays.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.